Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, on this special day. We want to welcome, we have an inspiration in the authors of Norwood's Matt Brown and Todd Sivan going to be speaking today. So let's give a warm welcome.
Matt doesn't like microphones, but I do. So, my name's Todd Sivan, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background on me, because as I said to Matt today, it's one of my favorite topics to talk about, is that myself. And it will tie into how Matt and I met each other, and then we'll let Matt share his story about his injury, the book, his foundations, whatever we feel like talking about. So, I work for a group called Smile Mass. Smile Mass is a nonprofit organization that provides education, recreation, and vacation opportunities to the severely disabled. We're out of Sudbury, Mass. And I've been with them 3 months. Now the reason I tell you this is because I started planting seeds back in 2008. And I didn't know I was planting seeds. I didn't know really what I was doing it for, but I'm going to tell you my story. So I was a warehouse manager in the book publishing industry. I wasn't a writer. I hadn't yet written a book. I don't want to say I wasn't a writer. I went to college for journalism, never went into it, and was working as a warehouse manager for a company that sold test prep books to schools. And I was there about 6 years, and I got laid off. And the president of the company called me up and he said, Todd, he goes, I'm sorry we had to lay you off. You were the best warehouse manager we had, but you need to go into a different field. And I believe I said something that might start with an F. And so I said, F you, Kevin. I said, I am the best warehouse manager you had, and I'm going to get a job tomorrow. Well, Kevin was right. It was 2008, it was the start of the recession, and I went about 2 years without a job. And during that time, I listened to what he said, and I started to write for the Bleacher Report. The Bleacher Report was an online sports website in which you can write articles, submit them, and if it's good enough, they'll publish them. So I had quite a Red Sox following, and I was finding a little bit of success that was not paying me any money. And another friend of mine said something very similar to Kevin. He said, Todd, he goes, you're writing about high batting averages and escalating salaries and steroids. You need to write sports with heart. So again, that's 2 messages I got. So I reached out to Dick and Rick Hoyt. Dick and Rick are the father-son marathon team, since deceased. That run the Boston Marathon. 31 Boston Marathons, 32 Boston Marathons, 1,100 road races, and just the epitome of yes you can attitude, which is what their motto was. And I'm not going to show you, but what the tattoo on my back says, because I connected with the Hoyts, and I met Dick for an interview, and when we were done the interview, I said to him, you know, there's this new thing, and it's called Facebook. And I'd like to build a page for you. I'm unemployed, I don't want any money for it, I just want to help you out. So that was seed number 1 planted. A week later, they called me up and they said, we were embarrassed to ask you this, but we want to bring you to a sports legends ball for the Hockomock YMCA. It's a black tie affair, and there will be a sports legend at every table. And I felt like my baseball card collection opened up, and there were just all these Red Sox and Patriots and Bruins sitting next to me. And my legend was Dick and Rick Hoyt sitting at my table. And I remember a story. I remember that night, they all got called into the VIP room to sign posters that all the other VIPs would get. So if you were a VIP there, you would get a poster with Steve Grogan, who was a Patriots quarterback, and Zdeno Chara, who was the Bruins defenseman, and Dick and Rick Hoyt, blah, blah. So I made believe that I belonged there. And I took Rick by the wheelchair and I wheeled him into the back room just so I could see what was going on behind the curtain. And Dick was signing posters. And all of a sudden, 3 Patriots guys walked in. And they were bigger than life. It was Matt Light, it was Troy Brown, and it was Joanne Drewsy, all big guys for the people, I look at the women, I'm so sexist, the people who don't follow the Patriots. And then they saw Dick and Rick Hoyt, and all of a sudden they shrunk down to size. And they were like, oh my goodness, Mr. Hoyt, how are you? So in the minds of the legends, they weren't legends anymore. Dick and Rick Hoyt were the legends. So the reason I'm telling you this is because Rick asked me that night if I would write his book. Now, I'd never written a book before, and Rick is a non-verbal spastic quadriplegic with cerebral palsy. He doesn't speak. So how am I going to write his book? Well, the way Rick communicates, he communicates one letter at a time. So if he was going to say Nancy, I would say, Rick, is it an A, an E, an I? He'd nod his head at I. I by itself, J, K, L, M, N, N. So I got the first letter that Rick was trying to write. So our book took 3 years to write, and it was called One Letter at a Time. Because if you can imagine, if that's how long a letter takes this long for a word, this long for a sentence, this long for a paragraph, and this long for a page, and this long for a chapter, the book took a long time to write. But what it did is I was now a writer. Before that I wasn't, now I am. And it was because I think I gave of myself. I listened to what the 2 seed planters had to say, and then I offered to do a free Facebook page for them, and the next thing you know, sometimes when you give and give and give, you get things in return. Over the course of the next, well, till today, I've now written 70 children's books and books about the disabled, okay? I still have a full-time job, but what happened is my wife for 12 years kept saying to me, Todd, you write all these books, you hardly make any money. What are you doing? And I'd say, I'm planting seeds, baby. That's what I'm doing, planting seeds. So in July, when Smile Mass called me up, and I had written a book for them 3 years ago about an adaptive playground they built in Sudbury, and they said, will you come work for us full time? I quit my job as a warehouse manager in the marijuana industry. I was selling packaging, not weed, just so, okay? It was like I say, Kellogg's makes the cereal, I was making the box, okay? I wasn't really selling the ganja. But I said to my wife, I called her up and I said, honey, it became a garden. After all that seed planting, the garden finally germinated. So that's where I am today. Now back up a little bit. Rick Hoyt loved the Boston Bruins. And when he got his speaking machine back in 1972, they brought it home from Tufts University, and they didn't know what his first words were going to be. His mother thought it would be, hi mom. His dad thought it would be, hi dad. And Rick just, the way the machine works is letters go by him on a computer screen. The only thing that Rick can control is the side of his head. So that's what an occupational therapist does, is they see what you can do best. Like some people can read or can speak by eye movement, but Rick's eyes shake all over the place. And he can't control his limbs, except when a pretty woman walks by. It's amazing. If you've ever seen Rick, his arms are flailing all over the place until my wife walks by, and then he gets her right on the behind. Right? Does he? No? Okay. So anyhow, so where was I going with that? I got sidetracked by the behind. First words. Okay, thank you. So Rick tapped out with his side of his head. Bunch of just letters, didn't make any sense. G-O-B-R-U-I-N-S, which spells Go Bruins. Those were Rick's first words, Go Bruins. And his mother and father were just amazed. So that year, the Bruins won the Stanley Cup. Now fast forward to 2011, we got an email from Andrew Ferentz, who was a defenseman for the Bruins. And it said, "Dear Mr. Hoyt, we just won the Stanley Cup, and we would like," oh, we got your email address from Zdeno Chara, who was the captain of the Bruins. "And we would like you to come to Spalding Hospital and the North End in Boston to spend the day with the Stanley Cup, and then to go to the North End and have some dinner with us." So here I am, again, my just life changed as after that conversation with Kevin where I swore at him, "Todd, you need to do things where you help people." So I did, and now all of a sudden I was having dinner with the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup. Now, as cool as that may be, when I was at Spalding Hospital, there was also a young man there from Norwood High, and he was in a wheelchair, and he was a hockey player. And that day, I met Matt Brown. And I had heard his story, but I didn't know who he was. And in conversation, he said to me, or I said to you,
I think you planted the seed of, you should think about writing a book.
"You should think about writing a book."
Not ready yet.
Exactly. He said, "I'm not ready yet." And I'm going to let Matt take over from here, because this is how, I guess I'm going to say, magic happened. To me, if you haven't read his book, it's fantastic. You don't have to be a hockey fan. You have to be a lover of humor. You have to be a lover of bravery. You have to be a lover of never saying never. And if that's a good introduction, I'm going to let you take over from here.
Absolutely. So I think everyone, I'm going to make sure everyone in the back can hear me. I know I got the microphone. But when I was over at Spalding that day, Todd, like you said, kind of reached over and said, "Heard your story, think you should really think about writing a book." And I was flattered. I was over the moon. I thought, man, this could be something cool one day. But I knew I wasn't ready. I was only a senior in high school. And with Todd working with the Hoyts, we'd go on to see him at the marathon every day, every year. And bright and early every Monday morning, we would exchange hellos. And as we would kind of go on our way to the starting line, Todd would need to go into the finish line. He always made a point to mention, you should think about writing a book. And again, I was flattered, over the moon. And this went on until about my senior year in college. And during that senior spring, I was together with all my suite mates, talking about our plans after school, and kind of what we were going to do after graduation. That conversation led me to understand that I didn't have a plan. And my friends were talking about internships, jobs, and all of that. And I realized that if I went home without a plan after spending 4 years at college, my parents were going to kill me. So I call it venting to Microsoft Word. I was able to hop on my computer, and I talked about basically the last 6 years. My time at Children's, my time at Shepherd Center, the memories, the thoughts that I had through it all. And about a week after graduation, I sent Todd a text, and I said it's time. And Todd and I got on a call starting that August. So I had about 40 pages, and I sent it to him. And that Saturday, those Saturdays, we'd hop on about 9 o'clock. Todd would read through what I had. He'd ask questions just about getting detail out. We would record it. He would send me the recording. I would transcribe it and fill in details where I saw fit. And after about a year and a half, all we really had to do was basically cut and paste a bunch of stuff that we wrote. And I think in the beginning, the dream and the goal, was to write this book for, middle school, high school, and college kids, going through the everyday challenges about kind of what they're facing in their lives. But I think we both got messages in the years that followed that it wasn't just for the kids 14 to 25. We were getting messages from parents, grandparents, aunt and uncles of all ages, letting them know that they were finding messages in the book about kind of what they were helping them with their everyday lives. And I think, going back to some of the darkest moments in my life were hard at times. I think in the end, I think I told you, Todd, that it was, it was nice, it was therapeutic going back, but some of the coolest things that we've heard through the book, my friends aren't readers, and I had a handful of them read it in one sitting, one night. I had two friends tell me that as they read the 200 and so pages, word for word, they could hear my voice kind of as they were reading and talking through. And it starts the night I got hurt, and it goes kind of back to in between of growing up, going to Children's Hospital, going to Shepherd Center and learning, what the world in a wheelchair was going to be like. One of the things that my parents, my friends, my sister talked about a lot is that, when I went down to Shepherd Center, it didn't mean that the world that I was living down there was going to be forever. But the quicker that I learned how to navigate the world in a chair and go through life, the easier it was going to be. So I thought I'm going back and going to those dark moments and being able to hear the responses from people that have read it saying, I'm helping them, the book has helped them with their battle for sobriety or their battle with depression, really made the entire process of it worth it. I think we've had some really cool moments with it, getting into the hands of some of the Bruins. I'm looking at the back of the book. Ray Bork wrote what do we call those? Endorsement. Patrice Bergeron. And one of the biggest things that kept being brought up through the writing process was a foundation. And I've been so lucky with this town, this community, friends, family, and the whole community, that they were a village behind me for so long. They made those dark moments and those dark days few and far between. I realized right away at Children's Hospital that I wasn't going to go through an injury like this alone, and I realized how important a support system was. So, going through college, we tried once. Paperwork fell through the cracks, but I knew that it was time when this book came out for our village to become a village for someone else. In 2020, we launched the foundation, smack dab in the middle of a pandemic, and I would not recommend anyone trying to do that. It took us 15 and a half months to have our first event, which was a golf tournament in 2021. And in the last 2 years, things have been really going in the right direction. We've had a golf tournament. We've done 3 groups in the Boston Marathon. Luke and I have, one of the coolest things that Luke and I set out to do back in 2012, that first marathon was, one day we'll have a group that will run the foundation. We'll run the marathon for the foundation. That took years, but we were able to raise money for the Travis Roy Foundation, Boston Bruins Foundation, and that marathon in 2021 was something special. I ran it with Luke and a girl that I went to elementary school with, who I just officiated her wedding. She ran her first marathon for the foundation. And in that time, we've been able to get a few accessible vans for a few individuals. We have 2 bathroom renovations coming up, and seeing the look, the smiles on these families, and individuals face is the reason why, we continue to do what we do, knowing that we can make a difference, a little difference in these lives. Is something that I set out to do, just like the Boston Bruins Foundation helped me, and the Travis Roy Foundation helped me all those years ago. So it's been a fun time.
Can you share the part, the night you got injured, you hit the boards, you're lying on the ground paralyzed. I mean, you didn't know you were paralyzed. And Coach Clifford said, put a Band-Aid on it, kid, and get back out there and play? Isn't that how it happened?
No, and so this is funny. This is normally I have no problems talking about that night, but with Coach in the room, it's bringing back some memories. So I think I'll be able to get through it.
Again, I can pick it up.
No. So 3 weeks prior to the accident, Coach called, told me to meet him in the athletic room after school one day, and for the whole year, I'd been practicing with the team, playing games with the JV team, but the hard work was starting to pay off. And so Coach called and told me to meet him down in the athletic office after school one day. I was ecstatic when I got down there. He threw me a jersey with the number 3 on it and told me that I was going to play in the game that night. We played Walpole, we played Natick, and I was a lineup and skated in wins against both those teams. And then with every game, I was feeling stronger and stronger on the ice, and I was getting more excited to play these games. So we played Weymouth on January 23rd, 2010 at the Hingham Arena down in the Pilgrim Arena down in Hingham. And it was a late afternoon game on a Saturday, so the boys were excited to go down, do our job and get a W, and then kind of see where the night took us. But when the puck dropped that night, we knew that we were going to have our hands full, and that a W wasn't going to be as easy as we thought. Weymouth was a powerhouse that year, and it was showing. Myself, I was not playing well. There was no simple play that I could play. Pucks were bouncing off my stick. I was on the ice. And halfway through the first period, Coach ended up benching a few players on our line and having someone jump up, trying to spark something and vice versa. And as we left the ice the first period, there wasn't a single player that wanted to go into that locker room. I think the entire arena could hear what Coach was saying, and no one wanted to go in. No one wanted to be the first one in the locker room. I don't remember much of that first intermission, if we're being honest. I don't know who I was sitting next to. I don't know who was saying what, but I knew that the entire locker room was trying to motivate one another to get out there, and try to change what was going on. And the second period started the same way the first period started. A lot of mixing and matching going on with our line. Until about halfway through, Coach turned and looked at the 3 of us and said, "Now go do something." And as I made my way to the boards, I saw that the puck was starting to make its way through the neutral zone into our defensive zone. And I popped the boards, and as the puck picked up speed, so did I. Before I knew it, I was in a race with a player on the other team, and as a forward, I think I was technically out of position, but as the first guy back, I made a decision that I was going to go for it. The puck went behind our net, bounced off the boards, and at the same moment, I looked down to see the puck between my feet. We collided and went headfirst into the boards. Now, one of the first things that you're taught in hockey is that when you get hit, you get back up and get back in the play, so you don't leave your teammates out of position too long. And I sent that message to my body, but nothing happened. I was confused, wondering, what's going on. So I sent that message to my body again, but the result was the same, and panic started to set in. Right before my brain kind of shut itself off, I remember locking eyes with my father. I hit the boards directly at my parents' feet. And for them both to be there at the same time, was incredibly rare because my parents never watched games together. My mom was always up in the stands with the moms, my dad against the boards with the dads, and this is something that started way back in, Learn to Skate. Both cheering hard, but, with their own little cheer sections. And when I came back to, I kind of looked around and I had a mother of one of my best friends trying to cut off my chin strap. But when I looked around, I saw that there were a lot of feet on the ice. There were a lot of legs on the ice, a lot of people on the ice. And my eyes met the bottom of my mother's jeans, and they were wet up above the ankles, which let me know that she'd been on the ice for a long time. And this was serious. And it's hard to describe, but I was becoming very agitated. It felt like I had thousands of pounds of wet concrete slowly being dripped onto me. And then the ambulance showed up. Took them a while to get me situated, but they were doing everything the right way, moving very slow. And when I was on the ice, you could hear an absolute pin drop. Both crowds were quiet, intently looking going on. And when I was leaving the ice, the crowd erupted, and I'm sure you've seen it happen. Football games, hockey games, basketball games. That when a player gets hurt and they're getting taken off the ice, they raise a hand, thumbs up, a wave, just to show their gratitude. And I tried to do that, because it was all I wanted to do was just to show my thanks to the group, but nothing happened. The ride from the rink to South Shore Hospital it seemed like hours. I was staring at the lights on the ceiling of the ambulance thinking, is this even real? What's going on? And I can vividly remember the blast of warm air when I got to South Shore Hospital. As I left the ambulance, I went into the emergency department. And what happened over those next 45 minutes was nothing but, organized chaos. I had nurses and doctors cutting off my equipment, checking on my body. My mom and dad were trying to get answers from doctors and nurses what was going on. We had friends and family starting to show up, trying to make their way back to the room, figuring out. And I was taking the X-rays, and before I even got there, Children's Hospital was notified. It was notified that I was going to need a hospital warm suitable for my needs. So right before I was intubated, basically put to sleep through a cocktail of drugs. I remember calling my parents over. I told mom and dad that I loved them, and they said everything was going to be okay. And I woke up at Children's Hospital, 5 or 6 days later, kind of wondering where I am, what's going on. I asked why I left. Why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? And I was lucky that just as I was hitting my lowest point, right when I was thinking I wasn't going to be able to do it, that revolving door of family, friends, and messages from around the community and from around the world really started to make their way to my bedside, and I realized as tough as this is going to be, I'm not going to go through it alone. And that support system has got me to where I am today. And I'm incredibly lucky to be from a town like Norwood, to have the family that I do, to have the support system that I do. And I'm happy enough to realize that we're taking that village and helping others along the way.
Can you tell us can you tell us about what it was like coming into town? And I believe something took place at the church, and Kyle was there.
Oh yeah, so I was still at the hospital at that point. Yeah, so I think one of the things that happened was, being 15 at Children's, my mom and dad would come in. My mom would do one night, my dad would go home, try to sleep, try to get some rest. He would come in the next day. So at this morning, at this point in time, my mom was doing the night, stayed over, and I was at St. Catherine's. St. Catherine's did a little prayer service. My mom, my dad, and my sister went up thinking, foolishly thinking that they'd be the only ones there, with a few others, and the church was packed from beginning to from front to back. That individual that I was racing for the puck against was, at that point, a kid by the name of Tyler Vicentini. Tyler, his family, and some teammates were at the church that morning. And Mom, my dad and my sister were able to meet the family. And Tyler, as you can imagine, was just in absolute shock. Just said he didn't want to play hockey anymore. And both, my sister and my dad said, "You're going to play hockey. This was a freak accident." And a friendship was started that day. And I think what I'm super lucky and what I think about the most is that with the way our family and his family are able to have this bond and have this friendship. It sucks that it started the way it did, but I'm super lucky to have him. And Tyler writes a chapter in the book.
Still plays hockey.
He actually finally retired from the game and is helping out coaching down there.
He played pro hockey, not NHL, but he played in the Southern Hockey League.
Yes, the Southern Professional Hockey League down in Alabama. And you hear Alabama, you think football and baseball and not hockey, but I've been able to go down and watch a couple of games, and they have a really, really good group down there.
Can you tell my favorite story about the nurse?
It's
Not Dennis, but the...
No, this story is awesome. In here, I was 15 at the time, so as you can imagine, hormones raging. And when I went into South Shore Hospital, like I said, it was organized chaos. There were people everywhere running around. And as I was on the table, a nurse appeared out on the right side there's a chapter, I think it's chapter.
Yeah, I'm not going to read it, I'm looking for
it. But she was gorgeous. She was out of my league, and I think the line that we use in the book is that, 15, playing the injury card, I thought, you know what, I'll shoot my shot. And we flirted, and I proceeded to throw up all over my chin, down the, I told her, I said, that's probably not the best first impression.
Well, you invited her to the prom, too.
Invited her to the prom. But that was back in 2010. And this book came out in 2008, 2009. And I thought to myself, 2019, and I thought to myself, maybe I made that whole story up. Maybe that didn't happen. Just because it was, like, I never thought I'd see her again. And in February of 2019, I was invited down to a Plymouth Youth Hockey fundraiser. We brought down a bunch of books. And as we're down there, the guy that invited us down there, Bill told us to put the books on the table. And two women approached me from the left side. One was laughing and one was sobbing. And as I turned, I think I described her as an Italian girl with dark features, dark hair, dark features. And as I turned, the one that was sobbing was an Italian woman with dark hair, dark features. And somehow, some way, her son was part of the Plymouth Youth Hockey team, and that was the nurse that I saw at South Shore Hospital. So 9 years later, it came full circle. And I was over the moon. I had her cousin at the time go to chapter 3 and read the paragraph that I wrote about her. So that's a story that's gone full circle.
You asked her a question.
What was that?
Did I really ask you to go to the?
Yeah, she said that. So she said that, in the book we talk about how like I shoot my shot and fail miserably, but she was like, no, you kept going. And I asked her to go to prom, and I was like, oh geez, 9 years later, I'm still embarrassed. But her daughter's a nurse now. Her son is a junior playing hockey, and that's another friendship, a relationship that I got to grow from this, and whom I never would have thought that something like that would have happened.
Are you lucky?
Lucky is an understatement, and when I hear people hear me say, I'm lucky, I think they kind of tend to look at me funny and think, how can you be lucky? I'm lucky for many different ways. I C4, C5, can't move my arms, can't move my legs, but my injury could have been higher. Could have been vent dependent. I could have had, issues with the brain. I'm still me. I like to say that I walk on 6 wheels. I'm lucky that my dad being one of 8, my mom being one of 6, I got a lot of family that have always dropped everything and come to our side whenever we needed it. I'm lucky to be from a town like Norwood, where you've seen time and time again on these different circumstances, all these fundraisers down at the Elks, or these fundraisers for these families, that this is a town that really drops everything and comes to your side and comes to your support when you need it. And I'm lucky to be part of the hockey community, where from the beginning I realized that I never had any ill will in the game. I think being able to go back to that part of the team junior and senior year, being that close to the game, that game again with my best friends, and having that role as a little coach down the corner, going down to the locker room during intermissions, and I still think if the boys knew how honest I was during some of those conversations, friendships would have been ruined. But being that close to the game again made me realize that my love for the game never disappeared, it just grew. So I'm lucky for many reasons, but my injuries on higher, family and friends that I have never left. And I'm lucky that the hockey community has really been there for me from the beginning.
What I was going to say too, and I don't know all the reasons why, except probably the reasons you just explained, but for every Matt Brown that gets injured, there's hundreds of people with injuries sitting in a dark room by themselves without the support, without, I don't want to glamorize it, but Matt's become sort of a personality because of his injury. Now, my guess is a third-line center in high school with mediocre grades, kind of a screw-up in school.
That's being generous.
Kind of a screw-up in school, wouldn't have become a celebrity without the accident. Now, that doesn't mean that any of us wish that we had an accident, but because of the town of Norwood, because of Matt's intestinal fortitude, because of his family, he's making a impact on other people because of what happened to him. So, you know, once again, I'm gonna say this. If Matt had a choice, he would, my guess is, he probably wouldn't have wished for the injury, but it happened, and he has just made the absolute best out of it to ensure that other people behind him don't struggle as much as they could. The foundation to me, like, I'm way older than Matt, I don't know if anybody knows this. I think of him kind of like a younger brother, okay, not my kid, 'cause I'm not that old, but a younger brother. And to see, not that he wrote a book, not that he finished college, all cute things, the fact that he's come through, started a foundation, and is providing support to people less fortunate than he is. That's when you say things happen for a reason, or things only happen to people who can handle it, that's probably not true. But this is a case of something really unfortunate happened, and he's made the absolute best of it.
And I think there were some, tough, hard learning phases during those, first, that first week, first month, first year, is that, we can't change the past no matter how much we want to. And I think one of the things that we learned was that, just dwelling on what has happened, can only make things worse. And so I, at that time, 15 and, hell now at 29, I realized that there's still, a lot of days left and a lot of years left. And I think my decision was that I didn't want to let those days and weeks and these years kind of go by without at least giving it my all. And trust me, I'm not the only one in here that has had, tough days or bad days. We're human. But I think we changed our thinking of, we're not thinking 5 years down the road. It's day by day, hour by hour. If we're having a good day or a good hour, let's keep it up. If we're having a bad day or a bad hour, let's figure out what we got to do, change it. Call a friend, get outside. But I realized that I didn't want those days of my life just because something bad happened. I use this analogy a lot in my talks, is that just because one door closes doesn't mean they all close. That door in January 2010 was a big door. That was a really big door. But I made it my decision and my choice to find other doors that are open, and that'll lead to more doors that will open, and from there on.
Do you want to open the floor for questions? We have, I don't know
Absolutely.
what time we get out, but, use some remaining time for questions.
Absolutely.
And then if there's more time to talk, we certainly will.
Yeah, I do want you to find that chapter, that paragraph in the,
Which one?
about from the nurse.
From the meaning.
Chapter 3.
What?
Yeah, chapter 3. Because
Is it cataloged under vomit or?
No, he's a funny line about from Dumb and Dumber. But yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any
Use the
questions?
mic.
Any questions?
Use the mic.
Oh yeah, once you find it.
Yeah, certainly. That's it.
It's chapter 3.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yes, so this will kind of take you into the thought about being a social hospital.
So Matt, Reed told the story pretty much the way it happened. As a 15-year-old with raging hormones, seemed the only thing to do at the time was begin to flirt. After all, as a varsity hockey player playing the injury card, I honestly believed I had a chance. I told her she was really pretty. She smiled at me as I proceeded to throw up onto my chin and down onto my neck. Probably not the best first impression. Both she and the rest of the emergency room laughed. So you're telling me there's a chance, I thought to myself, quoting one of my favorite lines from the movie Dumb and Dumber. Even while in pain, with my future hanging perilously in the balance, my sense of humor was sharp.
Yeah, and this has been our, watching this and seeing this become what it was from beginning to end. You know, there's a lot of people that say that there's parts in this that'll move you to tears. And I think there's, you know, parts on the next page that'll, you know, wipe those tears up and, you know, lead you to laughter. And I think that's been one of the biggest things that has gotten us through beginning to end, and, you know, just laughter and finding humor in difficult times can really go a long way.
I don't know where it is in the book, but one of my favorite lines is, one of my favorite scenes is, Matt had a girlfriend at the time, and not the nurse. And so here he is in the hospital, all wires and, do you know, what?
Sealed with a kiss.
Sealed with a kiss? Okay, let me read it, because
You're
it's
talking about her coming to the,
Star Wars line.
oh my God, it's so good.
That's a good line. So she came to visit, and he's all with wires and cords and stuff, and this is her first time seeing him since the injury. And they want, you tell it.
No, you.
Okay, they wanted a kiss. And so, again, I wasn't there to see it, because that would be perverse, but she kind of did the limbo underneath the bar in the hospital bed, and they got tangled up, and I think the line in it is, with the hospital machines beeping in the background, and it says, so it seemed like a scene from Star Wars with C-3PO.
She thought her Han Solo.
Yes, thank you.
Her Princess Leia's Han Solo was more C-3PO that day or something.
Yeah, it was just a good line.
No, there's some great lines in there, and like I told you, there's little intermissions in the book that kind of break you up in the story. That goes kind of beginning to 2016, 2018, that take you through the point of view of other people that were involved in the story. So we have Tyler, who was racing for the puck with me that day. We have Wes Burrow, who was my first aide back at high school. We have Dennis Doherty, who was my lead head charge nurse at Children's Hospital. And then we have 3 chapters from my mom, my dad, and my sister. So you get the point of view of all of them throughout the journey.
And we've had a lot of hockey parents say they don't want their child to read the book because Matt got injured in a hockey game.
That's obviously
Exactly. And you know, what we want to make clear is it was not a malicious hit. There was nothing malicious about it. It happened. And if your child is going to play sports or cross the street or ride a bike, that stuff can happen. But again, the way that Matt has handled the injury with such dignity and promise, and it's something that every person should read, whether they're a hockey person or not.
one of the coolest things that we've there's been 2 schools that have done it as their required summer reading, and that's been really cool. Going up to these schools, normally students that have no idea about the story about what happened going on, and being able to have a conversation with so many of them that are just for the book, it's that was a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah. Something I was going to say.
Any questions?
That's another one of my books. So again, this is a cool story too. It's called Pulling Each Other Along. Pulling Each Other Along is 31 inspirational stories written by 31 chapter authors. But it tells the story not of their rise to greatness, but who pulled them along to greatness. And I want us to think about this because in our lives, whether we're famous or not, we've all had somebody who's pulled us along at various times in our lives, right? You can think of them right now. We've also had times in our lives that we pulled other people along. And then there's times in our lives that there was nobody there for us, so we needed to pull ourselves along. So this is a compilation book that I put together. The foreword was written by Terry Bradshaw, who was a Pittsburgh Steelers great. There's a chapter in there by, they're not all sports stories, even though the ones I'm going to say are, but there's a chapter in there by Chris Nickett. Chris is the first person with Down syndrome to ever complete an Ironman race. An Ironman is 140 miles. He didn't just complete the Ironman, but he completed Ironman Kona, which is the world championship of all Ironman races. Chris's motto or philosophy is 1% better. Every day, in everything we do, we should try to get 1% better. Now, when Chris first started, he was, like many people with Down syndrome, kind of an overweight couch potato, not a very good-looking physique. A lot of times people with Down syndrome have balance problems, so Chris couldn't ride a bike. And he and his father talked about the 1% better theory. So Chris decided not that he wanted to run a 5K, but he decided he wanted to run an Ironman. His father said, well, you probably need to get out and be able to run around the block before you decide to do an Ironman. So he ran around the block. And the next day, he ran around the block twice. Now, mathematically, I didn't have the heart to tell him that's actually 100% better, but 1% better. So now, he's not only completed Ironman Kona, but he's in the midst of running all 6 major marathons. And the most beautiful part about it is there's now a 1% better foundation that other kids or other people with that are neurotypical, autism, Down syndrome, they now run marathons. So the Adidas Corporation has made a commitment, the 1% better commitment, that there will be a neurodiverse athlete in every marathon in the country. And that's because Chris took that first step of becoming 1% better. So he's in the book. Brent and Kyle Pease. So yeah, I'm gonna do a little bragging for a second. So Dick and Rick Hoyt are the first father-son triathlon team to ever finish Kona, Hawaii, okay? The Ironman World Championships. And I wrote their book. 30 years later, Brent and Kyle Pease became the second people ever to finish Ironman Kona. And I wrote their book. Chris Nickett became the first person with Down syndrome to finish Ironman Kona. And I wrote his book. Christine and Kayla Biggiotti became the first mother-pushing daughter team to finish the Boston Marathon, and I wrote their book. Beth Singleton and her mom Babsy became the first daughter-pushing mother team to finish the Boston Marathon, and I wrote their book. And Matt Brown became the first, I don't know, hockey player paralyzed in a hockey game to finish the Boston Marathon.
With the crazy push of the wood.
Yeah. So anyhow, the book is a feel-good book. It's some sports stories, it's some not. It's some disability stories, it's some not. One story that's really amazing, a woman from Westfield, Massachusetts, Laura Shagnon. She's about my age. Maybe she's a little younger. She's probably 57. When she was 25, she went to Boston to celebrate her 25th birthday. And she was kind of a naive kid from Western Massachusetts. She went by herself. She was kind of shy. She went shopping and then she was going to take the bus home. And this was the days before cell phones, mind you. Well, Laura was jumped on the way back to the bus and she was dragged into a car and there were sexual advances made, and she was beaten with a baseball bat, and she was, no, there's a happy ending. I know this sounds sad. Trust me. She was left in front of Boston City Hospital with no identification and no cell phone. And she spent 3 weeks in a coma in the hospital as a Jane Doe. Nobody knew who she was. Her parents didn't know what she was. After 3 weeks, she sat up and she uttered her phone number, and the nurse jotted it down and called her mother, and they found her. The parents came out to Boston and they said, the doctor said, put her in an institution, she's going to be a vegetable. And the parents said, no way. So they took her home. Now this is what, 32 years later, Laura is legally blind, quadriplegic, with a traumatic brain injury. She just got married to her soulmate, who's taken care of her all these years, and she cannot hold a pen. She's paralyzed. Her first book was called Never Touch a Pen. But she's written, and I've published with her 11 books of poetry. She's a poetry machine. She wakes up in the morning and she recites poetry to her soulmate Tom, and they give me too much credit, but I published her first book kind of out of the kindness of my heart, and now they come to me every year. Tom will text me and say, that machine has written another poetry book. So I wrote a chapter about her in the book to kind of tell her story, because she's been pulled along by Tom and big faith in God. And she goes and speaks at prisons around Massachusetts, teaching people about forgiveness. And I just met Lou Evangelitis, who is the sheriff, I think he's the sheriff of Massachusetts, maybe just Worcester County. And he's seen her speak, and after she speaks, these hardened criminals come up to her crying, because they say to her, I thought it was never going to amount to anything. I was going to kill myself while I was here, and I heard your story of hope and forgiveness, and I'm going to change. Whether that's true or not is beside the point, but just a tremendous person and a really cool story. One more. Let me give you one more. Dave Stevens. Dave Stevens, I'm going to show you a picture. Dave Stevens played professional baseball. And has anybody ever heard of the name Darryl Strawberry? Darryl was a player for the Mets, but when Darryl was recovering from addiction, he was playing for the St. Paul Saints. And he got into a game, and the first time he was up, he hit a home run. And then the second time he got up, he hit a home run. And the third time he got up, see a pattern here? He hit a home run. So he was going to be up a fourth time. And Darryl, instead of getting up to have a chance to hit a home run, he asked Dave Stevens to pinch hit for him. Dave Stevens was touched. His story is called Now Batting for Darryl Strawberry. So remember I said Dave Stevens played professional baseball, he played college football, and he was also a college wrestler. Dave Stevens has no legs. Okay, but he played professional baseball. Again, not major league for the Red Sox, but he played for the St. Paul Saints. And he has never had legs. But because he has, he also has won 6 Emmys as a sportscaster for ESPN TV and radio. And so these are just stories, the Matt Brown stories. The reason bad things happen to good people is to teach other people like us lessons in never giving up. You know, there's one story in Rick Hoyt's book, one chapter, it's called Pebble in My Shoe. Pebble in my shoe means when I wake up in the morning, and I have a pebble in my shoe, I complain about it. There's a pebble in my shoe. Oh my God, my back hurts today. Why? Because I bent over and I picked up a rake, right? We all do it, I know you do. I see everybody feeling guilty right now. Matt Brown sits in a wheelchair for the rest of his life because he wishes in some ways that it was only a pebble in his shoe, but he doesn't complain. Maybe he does. But, you know, we all need to keep it in perspective. We say, you know, my life is so terrible until you compare it next to somebody else's. One last story I'm going to tell. I didn't mean to take the stage. I took Rick Hoyt to see a hockey game in Worcester one time, and it was the Worcester Sharks. He loved hockey, I might have told you that. We were sitting up in the section where the wheelchairs are, and he was having a great time. I was there with him, I'm his friend. And we looked over, and there was a group of other people in wheelchairs who were more severely handicapped than Rick was. And they were there with an aide, not with a friend. And I don't know how to say it tastefully, but they didn't even know they were there. They were drooling, they were not in good shape. I don't know how to say it. And I remember Rick looking over at him, and he kept on looking over there. And so we communicated again through his one-letter message, and ultimately he said, how lucky I am. I'm here with my friend. And it's called perspective. It's, you know, I would never want to be in a wheelchair. I would never want to be a nonverbal spastic quadriplegic with cerebral palsy. But these guys are way luckier than other people that are not as lucky as they are. So it's all perspective. You have a pebble in your shoe, I don't know if you do. Do you have a pebble in your shoe? You have a pebble in your shoe. Some people have a rock on their shoulders. You know, so it's all perspective. Any questions? You do, sir.
Either Travis Roy or is it Matt Lavalier ever reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm looking at the back of the book, and the last endorsement on the back is from Travis. Obviously, you know, that's a story that every hockey player in the New England area knows. And I remember reading his book, 11 Seconds, in middle school, so you're very familiar with the book. Travis came into Children's a bunch, talking on the phone, and knowing that, seeing what he has done, what he did for us he got us our first handicap accessible van. I knew that I wanted to follow in his footsteps, and I don't think anyone will be able to have the impact that, you know, Trav had on the spinal cord injury community. But if we can just be, you know, myself and I know the Thomas Smith Foundation and the Jack Crotty Foundation, all helping those with spinal cord injuries. If we can do a fraction of what Travis did, you know, we're going to leave the community in a better spot. So Trav definitely had an impact on the foundation and I'm basically just, you know, helping us out with what to expect and fundraise, and always be there for others.
I want to read one piece. This tells a story of humor versus tragedy. Oh, this was the paragraph after the nurse. So likely out of a sense of guilt after my failed attempt to score me a nurse, my thoughts switched back to my girlfriend Megan. Someone needs to let her know that I might be a little late tonight. I thought, our first official date has encountered a slight roadblock. I chuckled inside, thinking of all kinds of excuses people come up with. The dog ate my homework, or I overslept, were nothing compared to the mother lode of all excuses. Never in history has a woman heard a I'm sorry, honey, I'm gonna be late for our date tonight because I'm paralyzed from the neck down. I thought it was funny.
Any more questions, sir?
During the early why me times I'm sure you had, what got you through it?
You know, I think it's funny. I remember vividly one of the nights that my mom was in. I was asking, doing the whole why me, why did this happen to me, and I must have not liked the answers that she was giving. And this was probably 3-4 a.m. And I remember something clicked, and she tells the story. It's vivid in her mind. So after I was asking why me a lot, I thought about Tyler. And in the middle of Children's Hospital ICU, I had the thought of, is Tyler okay? And I think I realized that, why me? Why me was a question that many people are now asking. Tyler's parents, Tyler's brother and sister, my sister, my parents. And what I think got me through is that, similar to what I said earlier, is that maybe I don't know why. But at 15, I still have a long life to live. And although it's going to be a little bit different and not kind of what I envisioned, we're going to adapt to this and figure out, how to get through each day and try to make each day a little bit better than the one before. I think, hearing you talk about the 1%, one of the things that we talked about going is the thought of, what if? This, one of the things that keeps me going is, what if tomorrow is the day that my arms and legs start to work? What if tomorrow is the day that there's a medical cure for paralysis and the cure for paralysis is discovered? Why would I ever stop trying when tomorrow could be that day? That thought of what if has been something that's really kept me going too.
I think when you were doing the book too, your rebuttal to that was why not?
Yeah, and it's if this is kind of the way that I can, have an impact. You made a good point. Back growing up, that I think I would have been able to have an impact on others and those around me. How this not happen. I doubt it. So take this and kind of run with it or roll with it and go from there. More questions? Any others?
Did that nurse regret not going to prom?
I think so. She's got 3 beautiful kids though, and she's married. So, if I could just be a friend to her now, I'm going to take it. I'm absolutely going to take it. But we were just texting 2 nights ago. So it's really cool that this little chance. Yeah. I don't know. No home record. She's and hearing, just what she's doing is great. And I would have thought that would have gone full circle.